make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Hello, and welcome to Let's Sip and Talk with Freema on this great Hump Day Wednesday. I hope everybody's having a great work week, and we'll continue to have a great work week. Remember what we always say, it doesn't cost a thing to be kind. Compliment somebody. Make somebody's day. You never know how somebody's feeling on the inside. So today we have on a special guest, Garry Gilliam, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I'm pretty sure he'll correct me on it if I'm not once he come on. He is a former Seahawks NFL football player, 49ers NFL football player, and he has a plethora of other things that he's doing, from mentoring our children in the community and so forth. So without further ado, let's meet Garry.
Today was great. We had all the seats filled. Shows that the community is interested in what we're doing. They've got input, they've got questions, they've got recommendations. It was tremendous. Had a lot of good insights from old and young. It was just really good to see. And Eco Village is just kind of a name that we've tagged onto the bridge, and within the bridge there's 5 different branches. There's work, eat, live, learn, and play. And that eat branch is what really makes it into an eco village, at least the eco sense of it. The solar panels, water collection, a bio-waste food digester that actually allows us to bring in fresh food waste and convert that into nutrients as well as energy for the entire operation. So a lot of technology that's out there, we just utilizing it now in some of these older historical buildings that are in places that can reach a lot of people. We're actually, looking for young entrepreneurs. That's what we're looking for, those people who don't necessarily have the environment or the resources to come design or start the business that they want to. This is a space for that. There will obviously be, spaces for homeless and felons, albeit to be able to train and make trades themselves, but that's not what it's pivoted around. There'll be spaces for them, but its focus is on, young entrepreneurs in the community. But then obviously providing resources for everybody. The former Bishop McDevitt is going to be our pilot model, our site one. That's the bridge, Eco Village. And there, our biggest hurdle right now is just trying to get the fire suppression system handled. So anybody out there, if you got any plugs to the fire commissioner, if you guys want to volunteer some time or ability to help us tackle that, that's the biggest thing now. And then once we get that up and operational, then it's just going to be a matter of, it's a school classroom already. So in terms of co-working spaces and office spaces, it's already set for that. So then we'll be able to open it. I like to say by the end of Q2, about a summer. Be able to get some people in there doing some of that co-working stuff. Now the rest of those phase, that construction tier will take a bit longer, but I'd say within 15 months you could expect the entire Eco Village to probably be up and running, unless there's, holdups with construction or permitting or zoning that may, cause some delays. We'd like that to get done sooner than later. People need help yesterday.
Hello, how are you today?
Hello. I'm sensational. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. So I appreciate you coming on to talk with us today. With Let's Sip and Talk with Freema, we like to talk to individuals that can possibly motivate others, learn from each other, because I think a lot of us learn from each other. So for the ones that may not be so familiar with Garry, and did I pronounce your last name right? Is it Gilliam or Gilliam?
Gilliam.
Gilliam. I do apologize. So for the ones that may not know you, can you give us a little background on you, Garry?
A little background or a lot of background?
A lot of background. Give us all you got.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born, not raised though. Was kind of raised by a single mom. Our situation as a family was actually so bad in terms of being below the poverty line, it actually qualified me to go to a private boarding school called Milton Hershey School. And that school was actually founded back in 1909 by the great chocolatier Milton Hershey. Him and his wife actually couldn't have children, so they founded this school called the Hershey Industrial School for Boys. And that's what the school was, just for little white orphan boys up through the 60s when black males were admitted, through the 70s and 80s when females were admitted. And by the time that I went in the late 90s, it was no longer just for orphans, but again, for families that were below the poverty line. So this is a completely cost-free boarding school. You live on campus, school is taken care of, clothes, food, everything. So I actually went to the school when I was 8 years old, and I had no idea that I was going to the school, actually. Me and mom, we pulled up, and mom was like, hey, go play in the playground. I'm gonna go inside the student home, sign some paperwork. I'll be right back out and we can head home. So mom goes inside, I go play. She comes back out. So I hop off the swing to go get in the car. And she's like, oh no, Junior, keep playing. I got to go around the Founders Hall, sign a bit more paperwork. I'll be right back to come get you. So I'm like, all right, cool. No reason to think otherwise. So I go, I'm playing, it starts getting darker and darker and darker. And mom didn't come back. She left me on the playground playing. And then Mr. Noggle, who turns out he was my house parent, he came out, God bless his soul. He's like, hey, Gary, it's time for you to come in and shower and get ready for bed. And mom had always told me if random people you don't know come talk to you, go the other way, especially if they're talking about showers and beds and stuff, right? So I hop off the swing and take off to where mom said she was going to be at. And Mr. Noggle, he's chasing after me. He's like, hey, no, Gary, this is your family. Like, we're your family. This is your home now. Like, your mom signed you over to us. This is where you live. And I was like, what? Like 8 years old, confused, as you could imagine, just confused. Like, did I do something wrong? Like, why didn't my mom tell me what was going on here? Right? Well, as you could imagine, very tough for a parent to drop the foot off, right? In a situation like that. But anyway, literally that first 2 years that I was there, cried like every night. I'm talking, holding a picture of my mom and smelling a perfume box, like just missing my family, missing being home, still confused, not really understanding why I'm here. And I got tired of being homesick, right? So luckily the school offered a ton of different co-curricular and extracurricular activities, definitely sports, right? So I did ice hockey, soccer, swimming and diving, football, basketball, track, baseball, through my years of being there. But then they also offered some pretty cool things like ballet, jazz, and tap. Right. Okay. I did that for 10 years. I learned how to play the piano and play the guitar. I was involved in choir. And this was great for a kid that wanted to distract themselves from not being at home.
Right.
So it got to the point where about 5th or 6th grade, mom had dropped me off. I still did see my mom, right? I saw her on the weekends, holidays, right? It wasn't like I never got to see her again. So I still saw her. So one of the times that she was bringing me back after visitation hours, she was like, hey, at home, we're good now. Like, I've saved up some money. You don't need to be at the school anymore if you don't want to be. Right. And I stopped and thought, the last 2 years of all the tears of myself, yourself, mom, and talking to people and kind of figuring out why I'm here. Like, I'm at this school for a reason. Like, we're poor. And Harrisburg doesn't have the resources that this young child needs to develop into what he's supposed to be. And you recognize that, mom. So thank you. I'm not it's not going to go for granted, though. I'm staying in the school. I don't want to come home.
Wow.
And mom was like, it kind of shook her a little bit. And I think kind of to this day, she feels like she missed out on a lot of my childhood, especially because of that moment. But, I realized that what was going on in that time was going to pay off tremendously. Right. Not just for myself, but possibly for my family too.
Right.
So an amazing school to say the least, right? Completely cost-free. You live in like mansions. They pay for your clothes, your everything. And then when you get into high school, it goes back to like its trade school roots in a way. And that Milton Hershey in the deed, like he really understood that the skills will pay the bills, right? So when you leave this school, we need you to be certified in a trade, right? Whatever it is you're interested in, we're going to provide that certification program. So it's called the Continuing Education Program at the school. At least it was when I was there. I'm not sure if it still is or not. But things like carpentry, automotive, agriculture, health occupations, business, graphic design, drafting, culinary arts, drama, like all types of things. And in order, again, for you to get your high school diploma, you need to get nationally certified in your trade. Amazing. Because once you get your diploma, that then qualifies you for the continuing education scholarship, which means that whatever university, college, trade school you get accepted to, the school will actually pay for the entire thing except for $2,000.
Okay. I mean, you can't beat that.
Like crazy, right? And I like, Mom, yeah, I'm staying at the school. What do you mean? I'm not leaving, staying here. And no one in my family had ever graduated from high school, let alone gone on to college and gotten paid for it, right? You know, so an amazing school to say the least. And while I'm at the school, I'm curious, like, you know, where the rest of these campuses at? Because the school to this day actually has the second largest educational endowment of any, even college and university, second only to Harvard, at $17 billion.
That's amazing, and that's wowing. You can't use
So
that word.
what that showed me was that you can definitely be an extremely profitable Fortune 100 company, but then also have an extremely well thought out, in perpetuity type give back to your philanthropic arm in a school, right? Especially hunkered down within education since 1909. Like, not what? Like, my man is ahead of his time.
It's still up and running today, still there.
Yes, with an endowment of $17 billion. It's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I was always curious, like, where are the rest of the campuses? But then moreover, like, where are the rest of the corporations that are building towns like the town of Hershey? Like, what Milton Hershey realized was that it wasn't just enough to create this chocolate factory, right? A place for his workers to work. But in order for them to really be efficient, self-sufficient, buy into this synergy, this village he was creating, he needed to create places for them to eat, live, learn, and play, right? No surprise that that's the model that I you know, pulled into the bridge. He created Hershey Park, Hershey Theater, Penn State Hershey Medical Center. Like, everything you want is in that town. And then to this day, right, it has yielded some of the highest property values in central Pennsylvania, some of the highest disposable incomes, some of the lowest cancer rates, the best ranked public school in the county. So he set up a town, geared around his workers, providing resources for them in every place that he needed right there. And then a microcosm of it was the school, which then, aside from just building these spaces, he created this culture, right? And at the school, it was called the whole child experience. And what that meant, right, embodied on our basketball team, we called it the whole man concept. And what it was cool, you play basketball, but what are you doing in the fall, right? Are you playing football? And what are you doing in the spring? Are you playing baseball? Then beyond that,
whole plan.
That was number one, right? You 3-sport athlete. Then number two, right? The same attributes that are making you a successful athlete are the same attributes that will make you successful in the classroom. And we're not just going to talk at you about that. That is the standard. And we don't mean just getting C's or B's. Like, we're striving for a distinguished honor roll. That's the standard as an athlete, most certainly. Number three was your spiritual wellness, right? Are you taking care of your spiritual wellness? Are you involved in the spiritual programs of the school? Are you junior chapel leader? Are you doing meditation, Tai Chi, right? Are you involved in that way? That was number three. And then number four, right, which really laid in for me a lot, because as that 8-year-old that was scared and confused and crying every night, the other kids in my home were actually in high school, didn't offer any help, right? They're kind of just like, get over it. You'll be fine. Like, no type of guidance through this situation. So number four of the whole man concept was your community involvement, right? Like, cool, you learn how to navigate through this school, through this world, through whatever it is you're doing. Can you make it palatable enough? Or are you giving that back to the rest of your community, right? So those are the four things that created this whole man concept, the whole child experience, as the school calls it, at Milton Hershey School. So amazing.
Wow.
Like, and then I ended up graduating from the school, but I did not use my continuing education scholarship, because I had earned a full scholarship actually to play football.
Okay.
So I'll pause there. That's like the first chunk of my life, like my boarding school. I don't know if you have any specific questions before I go to Penn State.
No, I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it. Keep it going. Keep it going. I'm enjoying it.
All right,
did you start now when you said, I know you mentioned that, you learned to play the piano, you did a lot of sports and everything. Did you think football was going to be that one that you went out with a bang? Did you know football was going to be that for you?
Yeah, so I actually had interest in baseball. I was getting scouted by the minor leagues. I was a pitcher And at the time, I think I was about 6'5" or 6'4", throwing about 94, 95 miles an hour right as a sophomore in high school, which is significant. So I had looks from baseball. I was starting to get some scholarships for basketball, getting scholarships for football. So I really had a choice of which sport that I wanted to lock in. Track. I had qualified for nationals in track and javelin. But for me, it was like, all right, which one do I, my body, if I got taller than 6'6", I might have went with basketball. If I was shorter than I am, I probably would have went with baseball or track. But like the way my body filled out and how I grew and matured, it was fit for football,
Okay.
So,
I just kind of wanted to know that because it seemed like you're very talented in multiple sports.
Well, thank you very much.
So carry on. Look, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, hey, lock in. I'm with it. So Penn State. So before I got to Penn State, right, I had a few different scholarships. I had partial scholarships to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, UVA. I had scholarships to Ohio State, Clemson, Stanford. But I had some requirements for where I wanted to go play college football and study, right? Well, one, it had to be fairly close to home, right? I had been away from home for 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
Right? I need the fam to be able to come see me at least a couple of times, right?
Right.
So fairly close to home was one. Two, I needed a chance to make it to the NFL, right? As much as I would have loved to go to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, like they're not churning out yearly, tons of NFL players. A few make it here and there. I actually played with one in San Francisco, Kyle Juszczyk, who I think he went to Harvard. And now I've actually met a few other athletes that went, to those schools. So I think I might have vibed with them a bit more than I thought I would at the time. But beyond that, wanting a chance to get to the NFL, I needed, which is the most important, I needed my degree to mean something.
Right.
I couldn't be going, shade definitely to places like Ohio State where the football players are like, oh, why am I here to take classes? I thought I was here to play football. Not the right culture that I need to be in. I would love to go somewhere else, right? So Penn State was close to home, is about an hour and a half away. It churns out yearly multiple NFL players. And then on the third one, right, my degree, there's this cool thing that the coach, Joe Paterno, had established that still stands true to this day called the Grand Experiment. Right? And what it is that not only will Penn State every year be a top 25 football school and come tear you up on the football field, but we're also going to graduate over 90% of our athletes, right? Second only to Stanford in top 25 football schools on average. And we'll be academic All-Americans and academic All Big Ten players, right? Not only are we top athletes, but we're top scholars.
Right.
That resonated with me, right? That was very similar to the whole man concept that I had growing up. So certainly Penn State was the environment, the culture that I wanted to immerse myself in.
Absolutely.
So I went to Penn State. And while at Penn State, I triple majored in business, advertising, and psychology. Right? I figured they're paying for it, so I'm going to max this thing out. So every semester I took as many classes as I could. I was there every summer session, all summer. So literally like for 4.5 years was just year-round school and football. But I did have some extra time, right? It was my redshirt freshman year, so my sophomore year, I had a pretty bad injury. It was Penn State versus Iowa, October 2nd, 2010. It was just before halftime. I was going down the field to lay an extra block, and my footing wasn't completely like in the ground properly, so my weight shifted the wrong way, and my knee ended up hyperextending. So I ended up tearing my ACL, MCL, meniscus, part of my patella, and had 3 bone bruises because of the way my knee had bent.
Wow.
So a pretty bad injury, to say the least. And it was supposed to just be 2 surgeries, right? One for the MCL, meniscus, patella, wait about a month and a half for that to heal up a bit, and then do the ACL because that was going to be another 9 months of recovery. Right? So I was already in for a long recovery. Now, in between those 2 surgeries, though, I developed a staph infection in my bone marrow.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah. So then I had to get emergency surgeries, actually 3 different emergency surgeries because it kept coming back. Just the worst, like excruciating pain constantly, couldn't bend my knee, couldn't straighten my knee, couldn't sleep, having to take crazy pain pills just to be able to try and sleep, just to try and do rehab. At the time, I was only double majoring, not going to class anymore. So now I'm not playing football. I'm not going to class. My spiritual health is depleted. I'm not contributing back to my community. So it did not at all feel like a whole man. like
Mm.
at all. Having to rely on people. Sometimes like I was on like one of those little like hover around scooters.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would die in the middle of the winter, like not be able to get up a hill at Penn State, which is like a mountainous, like people having to push me to class and like just like not. So it got to the point where I'm not even going to class. I'm hitting the professors up like, look, I'm studying, send me the PowerPoints, I'll ace the exam. And that's exactly what I did. I just aced exams, didn't do any in-class assignments and barely squeaked by these couple semesters that I was going through this. And I was really about to just stop playing football, right? I still in the back of my mind knew I had that scholarship from Milton Hershey School. So if football didn't work out, I could still continue my degrees and finish out, right? So that was really a thought process. Like football has now taken away football. It's taken away school. It's taken away my spiritual health, my mental health. Like I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, cool, I'm cool on football. And I was about to hit him up like, look, I'm done. And in all honesty, like most people probably would have been like, you had a pretty bad injury. We get it. You know, like, and I remember calling back to Milton Hershey School to Mrs. Ainsworth. And Mrs. Ainsworth is the director of spiritual programs at the school. And I was a Sunday school teacher in high school. So she was like my boss. And she was also the wife, or is the wife of the athletic director at the school. So we had a great relationship, right? Not only on the spiritual level, but also in the athletic arena. Most of the kids at the school, their parents didn't have the means to come watch our games. Right. So someone like Mrs. Ainsworth was very close to all of us. And right next to her was my mom, right? Mom always found a way to get to those games, right? So Mrs. Ainsworth was like my second mom. So I called her in this just time of despair, distraught, just didn't want to move forward. And as soon as she picked up the phone, I just broke down crying, right? Just let it all out. Like I'm a man of God. Like, why is this happening to me? I feel like I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I don't understand it. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. I feel like I don't have a support system. I'm by myself all the time. It's dark. It's cold. It's just woe is me. I'm done. Right. And she let me get it out. And then at the end of it, she says one thing, right? A very simple thing. And it wasn't that I hadn't heard it before. She's like, listen, Gary. She's like, yeah, yes. She's like, listen. God gives the hardest battles to the strongest soldiers. And what you're currently going through actually has nothing to do with you. It'll be a testimony for the soldiers you lead one day.
Absolutely.
All right. This is above me and beyond me. Let me
get it again.
I'm taking it. So and it was tough, right? I'm talking, I had a PICC line in, I had to inject myself with medication. They ended up prescribing me this pain pill called Dilaudid, which is like heroin pretty much. And I had 3 bottles of it, like taking a bunch of it so I could sleep because I couldn't sleep at this point, which also was deteriorating my mental health. Like it was just not a good deal at all. And then aside from all the physical things going on, this was also through the time any Penn State fans or anybody that watches college football for that matter would know what I'm about to talk about, was when Joe Paterno, who was our head football coach for 60 years, ended up getting fired for something that happened with one of his coaches over 10 years ago. And it all came out, was just a huge mess. They tried to destroy our football program, took scholarships, tried to give us the death penalty, fired our coach. Like it was wild, like crazy. And this was the same year that I was just coming back after being out now for 2 years, right? I didn't end up getting my ACL repaired. I got hurt in October, didn't get the ACL repaired until May, and then tack on another 9 months of recovery for the ACL. So I missed half my college football career over this injury. And the coaches that recruited me, the coaches who knew who I was and how I played, I earned a starting spot, just got fired. So, it was a lot of uncertainty. And then to add a little bit more, sweetener to it, the coach that was coming in, he was the offensive coordinator for the Patriots through like their Super Bowl era. So like when Tom Brady was just lighting up Gronkowski, Gronkowski is a tight end, same position that I was, right? So that position has an extreme focus with this new coach coming in. I haven't played in 2 years. I'm just coming off of a knee injury. I've got things in the back of my mind, like a conversation that I had with the doctor. Calls me into his office. He's like, hey, Gary, let me talk to you. He's like, I had a chance after this last surgery on your ACL to go in and check out everything. You got a lot of scar tissue that's developing in there. Your meniscus is pretty much raw. It's probably one of the worst knee injuries, attack on the complications that I've ever seen. I'm like, all right, yeah, I mean, I get that. We've talked about this the last, 2 years, 100%, doc. He's like, well, I got to be honest with you. I'm like, what do you like? He's like, your chances of really coming back, like you used to play, very, very, very small chance. I was like, well, like, what does that mean? Give me a percentage, doc. He's like, well, normally we don't give percentages. He's like, but you're like a son to me. We've been through a lot, I feel like, together. So I will. He's like, from all the things I've seen, different knee injuries, all the surgeries I've done, I might give you about a 10% chance to really come back and play football at a high level again.
What did that do for you? How'd you feel at that moment?
I perked up. I was like, doc, 10%. I was like, you know where I'm from? The life that I've had before I'm standing before you, double majoring at Penn State University on a full scholarship. I went to Milton Hershey School, which is only for kids below the poverty line, underserved individuals. And beyond that, my family for generations have never graduated from high school, let alone had a chance to go to a university. I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They're not churning out things like this. So what do you think the chances of that happening were? I'll take 10%.
I love it.
10% is a lot, right? So I took that, and that's what it carried me through rehab, right? I put my head down and just realized, like, what my high school football coaches always told us, like, as much as you want to be 10-0, before you can get 10-0, you got to be 1-0. And before you can be 1-0, you got to win the play right now, right? So one play at a time, one day at a time, just take it slow. All right. So that's what I did. And it was slow and long and monotonous, and it hurt, and it was horrible. It was lonely. Right. But it really magnified this quote here, right? That a skilled sailor is not made on calm waters. A skilled sailor is not made on calm water. So through my life, I've started to realize that all these adverse situations, this resistance that I was getting, was really helping me build my muscles up for different situations in the future, as Mrs. Ainsworth said, so that was college. And then, right, on my pursuit to the NFL, my very last year in college, I actually switched positions. I switched from tight end to offensive tackle. I earned a starting spot back as a tight end for a year, and then decided to switch. I had lost kind of a step. I felt like if I was really going to make it to the league, I needed to separate myself athletically as a tackle and not just be kind of a center of the pack tight end. Right. So I went to coach, who I just won a starting spot for, his main position as a tight end on his offense, a leader of the team. And I'm like, look, I want to switch. I don't want to catch touchdowns anymore. I'm going to go bang my head against people, I guess. So sat there for about an hour, talked it out, talked about the depth chart. I'm like, look, coach, the players behind me at tight end are phenomenal players, like Jesse James and Kyle Carter and Adam Brennerman, all of which had chances and played in the NFL for a while, which was, to my point, they were going to be fine. So I switched positions, and then he let me switch, and then I had to go from 265 as a tight end and get up to 300 pounds. So I did do that, and I did it in about 3 months.
Wow.
Because in order for me to stay about 165, I was eating like grilled chicken salads and stuff like every day, just trying to like keep my weight down. Actually, I didn't want to weigh too much. And then once the switch happened, well, I tell you, I was eating, going in. It wasn't the best weight either, like by any means. So anyway, I ended up got my position switched. I gained my weight, and my first opportunity to try and lock in the starting offensive tackle spot was in spring practice that year. We went through meetings, had our first practice. I was rotating in with the ones, feeling good. And then after practice, we had some conditioning. So, we're doing our conditioning, and I planted my leg to turn around, and it felt like somebody kicked me in my leg.
Oh, God, no.
Same leg. Pop. Went to take a step, and my leg just buckled, and I fell down. And I'm like, oh, I know that wasn't my knee. Like, I'm looking around like, did somebody hit me, or like what happened? Anyway, it was not my knee. I tore my calf muscle.
Wow.
Which was interesting still, kind of a nuance of an injury, just a nuisance, I should say, a nuisance of an injury.
Possible.
And so what happened was a 4-week recovery for that injury, but spring practice was only 4 weeks too. So I missed that opportunity to get film to make my case to be a starter. So now all I had was training camp leading into what would end up being my very last year in college. and I've never played offensive tackle for, let alone a Division I football school that plays against Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, like great teams, like big boy position in a big boy league. Good luck. So I did what I could. I was learning new position, handle business on the real. Ended up rotating in as a starter for most of the year. And then Bill O'Brien pulls me aside after the season. He's like, hey Garry, you're one of the leaders of this team. You stuck with us through all the thick and thin of Penn State, and I feel like we have a great relationship. So I wanted to come to you first. I got an opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL. And I was like, well, coach, I was like, Joe Pa was here for 60 some years and you've been here for 2. I was like, you leaving? You're not going to stay for 60 years. He was like, nah, this was always a, kind of a means to an end. And I've always wanted an opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL, and the Houston Texans are offering me that opportunity. So I'm like, well, I have another year technically to play football at Penn State, but I'm finished all my degrees. My coach is leaving. I'm really not trying to go through another coaching switch.
Right.
I might as well take my shot too. Like, all right, appreciate you, coach. So I kind of, mulled over the decision if I was going to leave or not leave, and then finally declared late. So I did not get invited to the combine, which was a great opportunity to showcase your talent and skills among a bunch of NFL scouts and coaches. Now all I have is one other chance to do exactly that, and that was our Penn State Pro Day, which was good because Penn State always put out a lot of NFL players, so all the scouts would definitely come to our Pro Day. And you're not just coming there to watch one player, you have to watch all the players if you're coming. So I knew that was my opportunity. So I did probably, how's the quote go? If you want to be extraordinary, you got to do a little extra. That's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. It's a little extra, something like that. Anyway, there was a fan that I had acquired through that time when Penn State was getting all the sanctions and they fired Joe Paterno and all the stuff was going on. I was actually the first player that came out before the sanctions were even dropped. I think it might have been a couple days before, and I was like, look, no matter what happens, I'm staying at Penn State, right? And I tweeted that out, and somebody, fans responded. One fan who was a troll responded. He goes, well, that's cool and all, but what are you going to be doing when there's no football program? Right. And I responded back, and I was like, well, I'll be finishing my multiple degrees, sir. I don't major in football. So it went viral. A bunch of people, retweeted it and responded to it. And I, gained a bunch of fans. One of those fans is a former graduate of the school. Her name is Lisa Rado. A bunch of her family had gone to the school. She's, a few years older than me. She's a nutritionist. So she had, hit me up and she was like, hey, I love who you are and what you're about. My family loves it. If you ever have any nutritional needs, let me know. And I'd love to assist. Any supplements you might need, let me know. So I was like, all right, cool. So I kept that in mind. And then, when I declared for the NFL, I realized, I need to separate myself, but I would love to stay here at Penn State to train. But when Bill O'Brien left, he also took the strength coaches with him. So I'm like, oh, dang. I guess I don't know what to do. So Lisa's like, look, I can send you meal plans and hope you stick to them and prepare the food that you're supposed to and hope you take your supplements and all that. She's like, but in reality, if you come out here to California, which is where she was out to California, I can get my hands on you, make sure you get with the proper doctors and trainers and everything will be good. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's cool and all, but like my family's broke. Like I'm a broke college kid. How do you expect me to fly across the country and pay for like all that stuff? My agents definitely aren't going to. They're small time agents. They're not looking to, foot a bill or something like that for a guy who may or may not get drafted. Like she's like, no, it's like, I got you. She's like, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of your flight. You can live in my house for free. I'll prepare all your food and take care of everything. Like a godsend. If it was not for Lisa Rado, I guarantee you I would not have made it to the NFL. And here's why. Right. And in the first 3 weeks that I was out there, she put me through a liver detox. We did blood panels, got me on the right supplements. I was drinking the proper water, working out 2 or 3 times a day, yoga, Pilates, workouts, conditioning, ice tubs, cryotherapy. Like I'm talking like Rocky IV montage type stuff. Like, and within 3 weeks, I ended up losing 19 pounds of fat and gained 21 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, wow.
In 3 weeks. So I hit my agent up. I'm like, yo, we might need to, figure out a way to compensate some trainers out here because I want to stay out here for the next 4 months. Like if I just did that in 3 weeks, imagine what.
Imagine, yeah.
Yeah. So they were down with it. They were like, look, your results speak for themselves. Well, what are we going to say? Like that's giving you your best opportunity to make it into the NFL. So I stayed out there for 4 months with Lisa and her family and just put my head down and grinded it out. 3 workouts a day, strict diet. Like it was wild. But then I came back for my pro day. Lisa came back with me. She prepared a bunch of juices for me, like beet juices and cucumbers and celery. She was looking at, what time of day I was doing different drills, like bench press or 40 and which like beet juice would help vasodilate this, right? So she was like giving me juices and things like on it. And get to my pro day and ended up putting up the top 3, 1, 2, 3 in every athletic thing, like vertical jump, broad jump, 40, 3-cone, like in my position across the country, top 3. So coaches are like, what
happened? Where did this come from?
Who is this? Like, wait, who is this guy? Right. So because to college or the NFL coaches, I'm only a junior, right? I technically had another year left, but I left early, right? And I declared late. So no one knew that I was even coming out or any of that. So they're like, wait, this kid's got some talent, but he's only been an offensive lineman for 3 months. We don't know if we wanted to pay him for this learning curve he's about to go through, right? But opened a lot of eyes, and one of the team's eyes that were open were the Seattle Seahawks. Like they came back to Penn State to put me through a one-on-one workout. Like, you did well in those drills, but we got some extra drills that we like to do to see what kind of player you are.
Yeah.
Right? So we're doing, our traditional football drills, kick slides, punches, everything. But while we're doing them, coach is asking questions, right? Like history questions and math questions. And like, he's like, I want to see if you can think and move. And I want to see if you can think and move while you're tired. So he's like, that's what's important to us. And it was, right? That was something that the Seahawks really locked in on, where not just these gritty players, but smart players, like these players that were kind of from the mud, had some tenacity, some adversity to them, a little chip on their shoulder. That's the kind of players they look for. I was like, oh, I like that. That's, it's kind of cool. So now that the pro day's done, the workouts are done, now it's up to the draft, right? Everything that I can do is out of my control. It's up to the football coaches. Right. So the draft comes, and I'm pretty sure with that, the first round within, I think first 10 or 15 picks, I think there were like 3 offensive tackles selected. And I'm looking at their 40s, their broad jumps, like all their things. And I'm like, bro, I'm better than every one of y'all. Like I got better numbers on average than all y'all. Like, shoot, let me where my phone at. Like I might be getting a call here soon, So anyway, first round goes, no call. Second round goes, third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, seventh round, and my phone rings. 7th round, very last round of the NFL draft, my phone rings. Right, but the team that's calling doesn't have any more picks. I'm like, yo, what are you calling me for? They're like, well, you're on the very top of our high priority free agents. We would love you to come into our training camp and our rookie mini camp, get our eyes on you, get our hands on you, really see what you can do. I'm like, yo, coach, the draft is still going on. Like, do not call me. Call me to draft me, right? And this is crazy because this ended up happening, I lie to you not, 31. Actually, let me not say it right. Let me not spoil the surprise yet. So I'm holding on. I'm holding on to all the teams like, look, yo, like, don't call me unless you're drafting me because of this. The very last pick of the draft was by the Houston Texans. Guess who just became the head coach of the Houston Texans? My former head coach from Penn State.
Okay.
Come on. I'm definitely getting drafted. Come on, coach. Like, I'm your guy, right? So the 7th round's there. Last pick comes. Last pick goes. Did not pick your boy, right? So now I'm an undrafted free agent. And coming out of college, now I get to actually choose which team I want to go to their mini camp. And it's kind of like being in college. So similar to college, how I had, a stand or, list of things I was looking for. In the NFL is the same thing, right? One, definitely needed an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl. Like, you're going to be playing at this level, you got to get to the top. So like, I need a team that's got that championship mentality. 1. 2, I actually don't want to go to do a team that's saying that I can start right away. Like, that's actually not what I want to do, like, at all. Like, I want to learn, I want to grow. I don't want to go out there, get smoked, ruin my career, or get somebody hurt. You know, like, I want to go somewhere I can learn from a couple of people. And I also want a team that's got like a certain culture. Like, I don't just want like the big meatheads and all they want to do is, you know, win football games. But like, show me the coaches that care for players a little bit more than just football players, right? So I actually chose to go to Seattle. Seattle had just won the Super Bowl. They had all pro tackles at my position, and they just drafted a guy in the second round, I think the fourth round and the seventh round at my position. So like, definitely didn't need me at all.
Right.
Everybody in my family's like, yo, you're going to Seattle? Like, bro, what? You're not finna make that team. There's no way. Mom's looking at me like, Junior, like, that was the one team I told you not to go to. Like, I didn't want you in Washington. That's where all the serial killers are at.
Oh, goodness.
I'm like, well, Mom, like, I've been close to home my whole life. It's time to leave the nest and go become a Seahawk, right? So I went to Seattle, and that just because I went to this rookie mini camp doesn't mean I'm making the team, right? I got to make the team. And so, like I said, they just won a Super Bowl. They got players at my position and drafted players, so they don't need me, like, at all. But I put my head down, and every single day, I pick one thing to get a little bit better on, right? Just one little thing, because this is what another thing my high school football coach told me. Shout out to Bob Geyer, got his Geyerisms. Here's one of them. Said every day you have a choice, right? You either get better or you get worse. You'll never stay the same. So choose to get better, even if it's just 0.1% a day.
It's still better.
So that's the mentality that I've had my entire life. And certainly in this moment for training camp and working my way through, and every day I came out before practice and worked on some things. Every day after practice, I stayed after with a coach and say, hey, what'd you see through practice that I should work on right now? Right. So I showed them I was coachable, moldable, that I wanted to become a better player. And through beating out 10-year vets and all pros and second round draft picks and everything, little OG from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that probably shouldn't have gone to Penn State, definitely shouldn't have graduated with 3 degrees, just made the Seattle Seahawks team.
Okay.
And it was awesome. It was definitely a great feeling. Like, you know, you made it, but
right.
Bro, you're a bench warmer though. Like, you don't even play, right? What are you doing? So
was that the goal, right? If I'm understanding correctly, you wanted to go learn and stuff. You didn't want to play immediately, right?
Exactly. 100%. So, and it was a perfect opportunity. I did not play offensive tackle. I was actually so far down the depth chart that it qualified me to be the big tight end.
Okay.
I have way more experience at tight end. I'm with that. So I'm doing motions and playing tight end and like running routes and things, but still as an offensive tackle. So it actually allowed me to get acclimated. It was a great little position, little role that I had, right? No bigger role though than this game here. We had made it back to the playoffs. We had made it to the NFC Championship game, right? In the NFL, if you win the Super Bowl, can you repeat? Can you do it again? Right. So that's what everyone's looking at is, can we do it again? We're in the NFC Championship game, which is the game before the Super Bowl. So we win this game, we're in. We're playing the Packers, 2014 NFC Championship game in Seattle, Seattle Seahawks versus the Green Bay Packers. Third quarter, we're down 16-0. About, which I know the time of the clock because I'm really into numerology anyway. Time of the clock was 4 minutes and 44 seconds when I scored this touchdown. I just gave you the bit. But anyway, this is what happens. We get about cross half field, and this is about the side of the field that I would come in more, whether it was short yardage or goal line. They would call the jumbo tight end to come in, and that was me. I was a bigger guy, go down there, block. That was kind of my role, and I loved it. So I toward that side of the field, I'm always right behind coach, waiting to get subbed in, whether it's for that or for field goal. So we're getting down, I think it was like third and short or something, or medium, and we missed it. So now we're going to kick a field goal. So coach turns around to me, and he's like, Gil, you ready? I'm like, yeah, field goal, always ready for field goal, coach. He's like, no. Charlie Brown. Yo, you heard him? Charlie Brown? No way. This is what Charlie Brown was, right? Charlie Brown was actually a fake field goal play. every week we had actually had fake plays in, whether it was on punt or kickoff return or field goal. Like we had, a little draw four on Uno, a little deuce. We're gonna get you if you're not paying attention. Now, this is the game before the Super Bowl. The play that's teed up can actually come to me, who I'm a rookie and an offensive lineman who shouldn't be catching passes, right? And to make matters worse, the one day that we practice this fake play is the day before the game, right? And kind of like a walkthrough setting. And we have, like I said, we had these plays in all year. So now this is like, play or game like 18 or 19 because we're in the playoffs, and we've never called it. So I'm not taking it seriously, especially not for this one. So we called the play in practice. I ended up running the wrong route.
Oh, gosh.
And then when the ball was thrown to me, I dropped it. So I'm like, there's no way they're calling Charlie Brown. Right. So when he looked at me and was like, Charlie Brown, I was like, all right, let's go. So it was called Charlie Brown because the holder, as he's holding the ball and the kicker goes to kick it, he pulls it up, right? Like happens to Charlie Brown, right? And he pulls it up and then he rolls out and he can try and run for the first down, or he can pass the ball to one of his receivers, right? So now, just because the play was called didn't mean it could go to me. It actually could go the complete opposite side of the field, depending on how that third down play went. I think Doug Baldwin ended up running the ball kind of random and ended up running to the correct hash for it to come to me. Now, the defense also had to be lined up the proper way. Right? They had to be in their field goal block, which means they were rushing really hard and not too concerned about somebody running out for a pass. So they were lined up in that way. So I'm looking like, all right, this is on my hash. The defense is lined up properly. Like, all right, let's go. So the third thing that had to happen for the ball to get thrown to me was the linebacker, who has me one-on-one, has to decide between either sticking me, covering me, or going after the guy who's running with the ball.
Yeah.
Right? So ball gets snapped. I do my thing. I release. And I'm looking straight at the linebacker like I'm trying to come block him. Like I wear number 79. I'm an offensive lineman. He doesn't think I'm running for a pass. So I sort of a little bit like I got to really looked at him in the eyes like, yeah, I'm coming. And he looked at me and then looked and saw John Ryan running with the ball and took off toward John Ryan. So I'm like, oh, gotcha. You gotta do my run, do my route, hit my stem, and then look up for the ball. And John Ryan's not a quarterback, right? He's a punter. So he throws the ball late, ends up throwing it though, a little gallop step, looked it in, tucked it away, scored the touchdown, and the stadium went crazy. Wild, right? So it was funny because my offensive lineman, first of all, we never score a touchdown as offensive linemen. Very rarely do we score. So when we do score, like the touchdown dance we got to be something serious. Like I'm talking, you got to hit the electric slide, like get the whole line involved with it. So they're like, gee, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? I'm like, I was always more cerebral about it. Like I don't. One, I'm gonna act like I've been here before, which I have. But then I'm also, I'm gonna shoot a little dagger. I'm gonna be intentional here. So I had always scouted who like their top player was on the team we were playing in case I ever scored a touchdown on one of these fake plays. Right. No different than this one, playing the Packers. So who's their top player? Aaron Rodgers, right? And what's his touchdown dance? Right? He always does his little championship belt, discount double check, right? So I scored my touchdown and I hit him with the discount double check. But to make it even better, right? John Ryan, right, the guy who threw me the pass, he actually used to play for the Packers and was cut on some, I don't know, some weird back office stuff, front office stuff. So kind of had some animosity toward him. So we never talked about what we were going to do, right? I scored my touchdown, hit the discount double check. John Ryan throws the ball to me, sees I scored, turns to their sideline, and does the same thing.
Wow.
But like, all right, it's the third quarter. We're down 16-6. I think we kicked our field goal and made it 7. Not really 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Not somewhere you really want to be versus the Packers in the NFC Championship game, right? So like, cool, you scored a touchdown, bro, but like, you got to win this game. And it's not looking good. So anyway, long story short, the game ended up being one of the greatest comebacks in NFL playoff history. Not because of the deficit of score that we came up with, but the way we did it, right? With this fake field goal one, we ended up having a 2-point conversion at some point. We had an onside kick recovery when literally the entire country knew we were kicking an onside kick, which never happened. Got it back, converted 3rd and longs and 4th and longs just to get us to go to overtime. In overtime, we win the coin toss, which is significant because whoever scores first in the NFL wins. So we win this coin toss, get the ball. I'm almost certain it's like third and long, and the Green Bay is bringing everybody, right? They're bringing the house on a blitz. I'm on the sideline, right? I'm not in the game at this point. I'm watching. I did what I had to do. I'm feeling good. Right? I scored my touchdown. Like, this is just kick field goals if we need to. But anyway, third and long, overtime, they're bringing a zero blitz, right? So Russ, he steps out from under center. He looks, and he does a check, right? He checks Cobra, which was a check for all goes. We're gonna sting you. Like, we're gonna bite you. You think you're getting us? Nah, we're getting you. So that made all receivers just go all go, right? All straight down the field.
Right.
So Russ drops back, right? Does what he does, dodges a little bit, and then boom, chucks it up to Jermaine Kearse, which is significant because during the game, right? During the regular time, Russell has targeted Jermaine, I think, 4 times. And the ball has gone right off of Jermaine's hands and then gotten intercepted 4 times, right? So Russ is still like we had this mantra. It's called hold fast. Like if you're ever on a boat, out and there's a storm, you don't hang on to the things that come and go, right? You find the mast, the thing that's been there for a while, right? You hold fast to those things, and that's how you get through the storm. That was always our mentality. Like, we're going to stay consistent, have integrity with who have been here, and we're going to ride together. So regardless of the 4 interceptions, my man checks Cobra, comes back, and throws it to Jermaine Kearse, who actually is covered like white on rice, like covered. The guy's draped over him like a backpack. Jermaine over the shoulder catches it in the end zone. Touchdown. Seahawks going back to the Super Bowl.
Okay. Wow. You made it to the Super Bowl.
Wild. Crazy game. Then we go on to the Super Bowl, which was also a crazy game. It was the game when it was the Seahawks versus the Patriots, and we didn't hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch on the 1-yard line. It was that Super Bowl where we lost, which made the game that I caught the touchdown even more significant. I actually had you might be able to see it. I have the football and the ring from the game. It's up there. So pretty cool. And we won it. It was great. And then went and lost the Super Bowl. Definitely the most exciting football story I have.
This whole thing, it had me like, just what happened next and what happened next. I love it. So you're to the Super Bowl your rookie year. Okay.
And so then after that, continued to play for the Seahawks for a few years. Ended up earning a starting spot actually after that very first year. That next year, earned a starting spot as an offensive tackle. Played there for a few years. Then actually earned a couple more contracts with the 49ers, where I then went to play after. And then I started the Bridge.
Tell us about the Bridge, the Eagle Reach.
Right. What is the Bridge?
Right.
What are we even here for? I'm done hearing about you, Garry. Tell me about the Bridge.
No, I enjoyed it.
Now, so what the Bridge really is instead of going back to my community and holding the Gilliam football camp, realizing that all 300 of those kids really have no chance of making it to the NFL. And this is really perpetuating this cultural indoctrination that as a young Black boy, the only way you're going to feed your family is with athletics, entertainment, right? Being a rapper or selling drugs.
Right, yeah.
Well, selling drugs gets you locked up or killed. Most rappers really don't have that much money, in all honesty. And 88% of NFL players are bankrupt within just 2 years of playing. So now, not only young 300 kids coming to this football camp thinking that because they touched Gary's hand,
That they won't, yeah.
Not only do you not have a very high chance of making it to the NFL, but then you have a very high chance of losing almost all your money. I feel like we could do something else. I feel like with the platform that an athlete has, the social capital that each of us have, we can do something a bit more significant than just a football camp, right? What about, a STEM camp or a financial wellness seminar, right? Or something along those lines, right? So that was always, kind of something that I wanted to do. I was the guy in the hot tub when we're stretching, guys got their headphones on, they're scrolling through Instagram, looking at God knows what. I'm a guy hitting them like, hey, bro, hey, yo, what's the last new thing you learned not related to football? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Like, just give me one thing, right? Just please, one thing. And they would always just, not come up with something or make an excuse. You're just like, bro, you're on some random stuff, or this is where it would always kind of lead. Because I would always ask, like, let's do something. You want to go back home and do something beyond the football camp, like a financial literacy camp. And they would say, well, I have a financial advisor who actually, they budget all my money for me. And then they just send me a check for my disposable incomes. That's my fund money. That's the check I get. Everything else is managed by other people. And I'm like, bro, you do know that 88% of us are bankrupt within just 2 years of playing, right? You don't think that all those other players had financial advisors and people helping them with things? They're probably the ones possibly taking advantage of them. Like, you might want to educate yourself. I don't know, maybe a little bit, like at least enough that you know. At least enough to know, and maybe a little more so you can go home and talk to some other people about it. Everyone's got financial wellness things that they got, budgeting and investing, and if you've got access to some resources and knowledge, bro, bring it back to your hometown. Like, you maybe not have to talk about it, but that don't mean you can't hold a camp with panel speakers that are talking about financial literacy, right? So as we would have these conversations in the hot tub, right, the culture would kind of start to change a little bit. Guys are seeing me in the locker room like, hey, yo, G, you getting a hot tub yet? Like, I got something for you. I learned something. I want to share with you. I'm like, yeah, okay. So this shows, okay, you may not have been raised the same way I was, right? At Penn State and at Milton Hershey School, but we just got to have conversations because you have the same interest and the same want and desire to go back to your community and do something grand. You may just not know how. Okay, good to know. So in my quote unquote transition out of being a football player, which there was never a transition because my whole life I was a football player and a scholar and this and right, it was always concurrent. There was never a backup plan, never a plan B. It was always I'm gonna grow and be great in all things that I do. All things. Right? So one thing at Penn State that we learned was at my business school, identify a point of pain and solve it, right? With a product, a good or a service, and you'll be a pretty wealthy individual. So that's how I kind of moved through college and through my professional career, was identifying points of pain. And then I would write up entire business plans about how to really solve that point of pain. And I had those, right? And they were all kind of different. And then as I'm looking at them, I'm like, these things kind of have like a common denominator to them. Like, they're really about helping people, right? Okay. So I think I finished playing with the 49ers. I want to say it was February of 2019. And then March 31st of 2019, Nipsey Hussle was assassinated. And this is extremely significant because of what Nipsey was doing for his community, right? He was creating a pipeline between the inner city and Silicon Valley through his co-working space, Vector 90. Right? I love that. That was major to me. He was acquiring commercial real estate and creating mixed-use developments within his hood for his community, right? And preaching ownership and showing the blueprint on how to get there, right? He had the blueprint even within his music, right? And then he was shot and killed, unfortunately, in front of one of the properties that he owned. So it's a tragic thing. So as I'm watching this go down and I'm learning more about Nip and what he was doing, and especially what he was doing for his community, it really just sparked something to me. Like, Nipsey is a great man, a great individual, but even himself, he had to grow up in the gang life and on the streets, and he didn't have an opportunity to go to Milton Hershey or Penn State and get the education, go to the NFL and make money like you have, Garry. Like, what are you doing for your community? What are you doing? Right. So that question, what are you doing? 2, right, back to some of those original questions from Milton Hershey School of why aren't there more of these campuses, right? And why aren't more corporations investing in their communities in a substantial way with infrastructure, intentional infrastructure? Just like my former teammate Marshawn Lynch would always say, like, hey, bro, let's stop talking about it. Go be about it, right? You about that action, right? Go be about that action, boss. So that's what happened. So points of pain, bunch of different business plans, eventually all came into one ish, right? And that ended up being the bridge. So what the bridge is a for purpose, real estate development company that acquires properties like schools, malls, warehouses, and then we convert them into what we call an eco village, right? So this is essentially an adaptive reuse, value add, commercial mixed use development that has spaces for the community to work, eat, live, learn, and play. So those work spaces, that's co-working spaces, maker spaces, really the zone for entrepreneurs to come, create businesses, work together, and then go to the market with them. That's the workspace. Eat, work, eat. Eat is looking to convert food deserts into food oases. Right? And how do we do that? We got to grow food. We got to grow food in the inner city, but there's not a lot of land. So how do we do that?
Right.
Ag tech, right? Agricultural technologies like hydroponics and aeroponics and aquaculture allows us to grow fish and food within fully controlled environments and on 1/3 of an acre. For example, it allows you to produce enough food to actually feed 100,000 people. Wild, right? So that's the eat branch, is growing food. Also got restaurants and retail on site too. So work, eat, live is housing. Right. This is actually low income housing and market rate housing. Right. It's not just enough to cram a bunch of low income individuals into one space and then not provide programmatic activities for them. Right. But then it's also not enough to just provide those programmatic activities in places where it seems most financially feasible, right, in the most affluent neighborhoods, because they're not the ones that need those programs. Right. So it needs to be a mesh of these two housing structures because it creates a village. Right. It also creates a synergy, right? We're better together than we are separate. So work, eat, live, learn. I'll come back to learn because learn is the foundation for everything else within the bridge. Work, eat, live, learn, play, right? Instead of complaining about the dirt bikes, the ATVs, the drug dealing, the guns, we need to provide outlets for our communities.
Absolutely.
The youth and the adults alike. Right. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and this is very similar to any other inner cities, you're not finding things like rock climbing walls, access to nature, batting cages, virtual reality, go-karts, right? But you can leave 15, 20, 30 minutes outside those cities and you're finding them. Your adventure sports and your sports emporiums, right?
Yep.
But the people who need the outlets the most, right? The people who live in the most traumatic environments, who are watching their family members sell themselves, sell drugs, be shot and killed daily, don't have an outlet for those things, right? So what our development company does, right, is it acquires these old schools that are strategically located for individuals that we're targeting, converting them into these mixed-use developments to have spaces to work, eat, live, learn, and play. Now back to learn. It's not just enough to build these physical spaces, but what are you doing to change the culture? What are you doing on a programmatic level to promote self-sufficiency?
Right.
So this is what our nonprofit does, is it partners with other nonprofits, universities, educational institutions, political powerhouses, corporations to bring in the programmatic activities and the curriculums that go on within the spaces. So for example, within the workspace, not just enough to create co-working spaces and maker spaces, but through partnerships with Harrisburg University and their Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, helps us establish the incubation and acceleration programs for said entrepreneurs within these environments, right? So the point of pain, I'll open it up a bit, the point of pain for our work branch is actually within the corporate workplace sector or industry. And one of those key impact measures is executive roles held in business, right? So in Harrisburg, which is in Dauphin County, the top 50 companies in Dauphin County, not one has a Black CEO, but Harrisburg is a majority Black city.
Interesting.
That sounds like a disparity, a gap, if you will, that needs a bridge.
Right.
Corporate workplace. We can also look at health and wellness, right? Within the EAT branch, obesity levels and asthma and these pre-existing health conditions, access to healthcare, right? All those things are within health and wellness. And there again, we find disparities, extreme disparities, like not a gap, but like a tide. Hence our tagline, span the tide. So work, eat, live, learn, play, learn, providing the educational programming, right? Learn to work, learn to eat, learn to live, learn and learn to play. Learn to play is a very important one too. That's the correlation between mental health, physical health, and normalizing therapy.
Absolutely.
Like, yo, we've been through some traumatic things. Like, bro, you got to talk to somebody.
You got to talk to somebody. Yes.
You got to talk to somebody, my guy. You feel me? Like, and let's get this out. Let's figure it out. Let's do that inner work, that self work. So then we can fill our community cup up once our cup is filled up. Right? So that is what the bridge is doing. And what we realize with our disparity studies, and not just Harrisburg, but across the nation, is that each of these problems are actually connected. Right? They're kind of a holistic system of issues. This system we identify as systemic oppression. Right? There are things, laws, policies, situations that were set up to keep certain people down.
Right.
Women, Black individuals, indigenous individuals, right? Poor white people, right? There's things that were put in place to keep a certain socioeconomic status in a level, right? So that system is in place, and it's kind of in the background of America, just kind of churning. And even a bunch of different global economies too, but specifically to America, it's here. We see it and we feel it. But the only way to really combat a system is with another system.
Right.
So that's what the bridge is actually doing, is it's creating these spaces in the culture to establish a system within a community that we deem as systemic empowerment. That not just combats, but strategically dismantles systemic oppression.
This is powerful.
A little bit more than a football camp, I'll tell you.
Absolutely. Way much more. This is very powerful.
So that's what we're doing. Main campus is there in Harrisburg, and we're in the process of working with other athletes and entertainers to replicate the model in their town, in their city. Just literally earlier today, I got off of a call. They're like impact investment funds that are putting together literally billions of dollars to invest in minority developers that are doing exactly what the bridge is doing. So like there's never been a time in history to come up with something like this, not born out of the issues of 2020, right? What 2020 did, because we started it back in 1909, the bridge, right? Let's say we're building an ark, and people are like, dude, what you building that ark for? Like, there's been a drought for like 50 years. Like, you don't need to build an ark. We're like, nah, like there's floods going on like us. So then 2020 happens, and it really magnified just 4 global crises, right? Our racial crises ongoing. We had which the racial crisis was like going back to like 1865, like dang near back to 76. Like people was talking about founding own countries and seceding and civil wars. Like it was like, whoa. That was one. 2, we had a global pandemic, right? Like we were back in like 1912 with the Spanish flu or something, like back in time again. Number 3, our economy went just to nothing, right? Like almost a Great Depression, like we were back in the 1930s again. And then our ongoing and ever-growing environmental crises was on front and center, right? So these 4 things now magnified the disparities that we provided solutions for.
Right.
Work, eat, live, learn, play, eco-village, equality, sustainable food, workforce development, self-sufficiency. So what that did then was municipalities, investors, developers, property owners from across the nation and the world. The president of Nigeria reached out to us with properties for us to initiate this exact model in their towns, in their cities, and their properties, right? Like, so again, there's never been really a time in history with something that could have been formed like this and then have so much access to capital to make it scale and multiply to help people the way it's supposed to.
This give you chills. Can you imagine how this is going to in the future? You know, like when this is really just going, it's up and running. This is like so powerful. This is amazing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we start or break ground on, well, I don't even break ground, we already broke ground. Our next phase of construction starts in the spring, which is the heavy construction on our main campus there in Harrisburg. But all the while, we are in the process of doing pre-development work with other municipalities across the country. I can't speak on them specifically, but it's very rewarding, you know. And every day I get inspired with some of the conversations that I have. People, what really keeps me going is the amount of hope that people get.
Right.
Like you see that they're like people see these racial issues and or the environmental issues just like big global issues. And they're like, what can I do as an individual? It's a lot, right? And how could you possibly do something, right? So people get anxiety, or they just ignore it all together and think that, I can't do anything. Well, you can, right? Like we really can. Like each of us, like if you realize, like on a spiritual level, on a science level, whatever it is, if you realize that you as an individual, as a human, your perspective is extremely needed because of this. We are all physical perspectives of the same consciousness. So in order for us to solve the most complex issues we have as a species, we need to work together. We need different viewpoints of the same problem to provide the solutions for those things. And the only way we can do that is by being inclusive in our developments, right? To bring people to the table, because remember, talent is evenly distributed, but resources and opportunity are not.
Yes. Wow. This whole segment was amazing. Like I'm kind of lost for words. I'm gonna be honest with you, because all this greatness that's coming about, all this coming together to help each other, and like you say, to work, eat, live, learn, play, like all this is just, it's just, I don't know, it does something to me, because like I mentioned before, my platform, it may not be, but for the ones that do listen, or, the one or two people that do get inspired by each individual story, it does something to me to know that, okay, Freema, you were able to make a difference in at least one person's life tonight. And I know by God, by people hearing your story tonight, it had me on edge. So I know, and just from what I'm going through personally with my son, where he feels like it may be the end of the road, because of his injury, just hearing your story gave me the like, okay, we can do this. I'm back motivated. We're going to get through this, and we're going to keep it going. So I appreciate you more than you know. I enjoyed this tonight. I really do. I really, really did.
Yeah. No,
I definitely have to follow up, with what's going on, the second phase and all this good stuff. This was great. I appreciate this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I enjoyed it as well. Is there anything else out there that you would like to put in the universe that we didn't speak about? What would you tell the little Garys out there that maybe kind of need the motivation? I always ask, the guests that come on, what motivational words can you give someone that may be scared to take that dive? Or like I mentioned, my son who has this major injury and can't play football now, what would you tell them? What would you tell these individuals to keep them going and motivated?
Yeah, I'm going to lean in heavy on one of the quotes I said, and that's, a skilled sailor is not made on calm waters. And what that really means is that, as odd as it sounds, like when you have fear, or when you see something that is adversity, or something that you're struggling to go through, like hit it head on. Like that is God, the universe, whatever you want to believe in, that is an opportunity for you to grow and to get better, right? That vulnerability that you're feeling in this moment will be the same thing that is the catalyst for your growth, right? So I always tell people, especially within the inner city, especially kids that have gone to Milton Hershey School, because I know what qualified you to go to that school. I tell them all the time, like, look, you getting through what you're getting through, one, with your family, this school is an extremely hard school to go to. It is preparing us to be extremely successful beyond just the education we're getting, but our EQ, right? Our emotional intelligence is bar none because of the experiences that we've had here. The experiences that you've had in your life allows you to develop into who you need to be. Right. So as long as you trust that, and every day you just keep that little bit in mind, and every day you may not get better. That's all right. But as long as you have the intention to get better, you got up in the morning and you knew that you had an opportunity. That's what really matters, right? Keep that hope, and remember that the adversity is what makes you stronger, right? That's the extra weights on the barbell when you're lifting weights, right? That's life letting you know that you got some hard battles coming up in the future, and we need you to be strong enough for it. So take that, right? Have honor in that. Take that anointing and go forward with it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna just ask you to stay on a few moments after, if you don't mind. Viewers, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys share this so people can hear this. This is some great, he gave us some good knowledge, feedback, motivational words. He shared his journey with us, and it was great. So make sure you guys share, tune in. Again, Garry, thank you so much. And as we always say on Let's Sip and Talk with Freema, peace and love.